5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey there, prosperity practitioner. I am on today with Adam Walton from what is it, dude? So you put the in the front there, and that's screwing me up. But the Mental Mastery Alliance,
Yes,
did I
sir.
get that right?
Yes,
You
sir.
put this, look, man, we are creatures of habit, and you throw like one small thing off, and it disrupts us that easily.
Well, it's a funny thing. I mean, in the sense of business, it's true. I mean, I put the in, and I originally took it out because it's not the Facebook, it's not the Instagram, even though I say it now the. But honestly, I had an issue with one of my builders and one of my designers a long time ago, and they hijacked my work.
Oh, wow.
So without the I no longer owned it. I didn't have control over it. So I rebranded absolutely everything. I added the to Mental Mastery Alliance.
Okay.
And just changed everything. I added those 3 letters and I completely regained control of my life. So that's just a small lesson in being, advantageous. Chaos isn't the problem. It's just something to overcome. So I didn't freak out when I got hijacked. I said, well, screw you. I'm just going to add a couple words to my name and we're good to go.
For sure. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And I think that really talks to exactly what we're going to be speaking about today. And for those that don't know Adam is a mindset coach who's been at this game for quite some time. And he was my first coach in the podcasting realm when I worked along with you and Sam Crowley, and probably the third coach that I've had myself. And what's funny, Adam, is that I look back to our first couple of conversations, and I still recall how I took the information you were giving me then and how it's being applied now. So I think that was really interesting, because what you delivered at the time, I wasn't understanding at the time because my mind wasn't there yet, right? Which is really interesting. So then I look back and I'm like, oh wow, Adam really, he gave me some really great information. This is what he intended, and like this is how it all worked out. And I think that one of those things that I'll talk about that showed up, because this, prosperity practice is about getting your mind right, but it's also about like really aligning yourself with the universe, we'll say, right? And things kind of popping up without us knowing exactly how they're going to happen. And in saying that, Adam, in the contract that you had sent over, had said that I would double my income when I was done with the coaching program. And that happened. But it wasn't any way the way that I expected it to. You want to talk about that a little bit?
So first off, like when it comes to contracts, I'm personally more of a handshake kind of guy. Mm-hmm. But the fun thing about contracts is people believe that they're in there, and now, especially now too, like legalese and all that sort of stuff. Written contracts are mandated. I say take them. Like you have to have a contract,
right?
Because that signature it signifies mental connection. It signifies your word for the most part. It signifies protection. There's certain certain elements that go along with it that have people more comfortable with what they're doing when there's a piece of paper signed.
For sure.
And these are all things that have been put in our head. There's no difference between the work that you could have done or not done without a contract, but having the contract allowed you to mentally prepare a little bit more. And I talk about contracts in a sense, and I say the contract as in it wasn't my contract. At the time, I had been subcontracted out to another individual, Sam Crowley, as you had originally mentioned. And we were working in tandem, trying to connect people with their dreams and exposing certain things. It was a phenomenal project, phenomenal project. I loved working with him. I still chat with him. He's still a phenomenally entertaining individual to work with and to connect with. Now, I say that because when I was connecting with you, there was so much of me that went into that original pitch, that original program, that original connection. Even though it was through a different company, it's the world works in mysterious ways. Like you had said, how things are all interconnected.
Right.
One of my gifts is the ability to see sort of who you are, what you're all about very quickly. And the world, what's really great about that is the world doesn't want to believe that that's possible because inside their head, The individual, they're so complicated. Nobody could possibly understand what they're doing or where they're going and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
There are a few people on this planet that I've come across that their energy speaks far greater volumes than their actions carry them. And you were one of the few people, and I've said this to you a few times over the years, that of the thousands of people that I've
never gets old.
There you go. Of the thousands of people that I've come across and that I've worked with,
right,
you stood out. You and about I can think of 10 people off the top of my head, and I could name them, but I'm not going to. But I could name them of all the people that I've worked with that have stood out, and that have left an impact on me. So now back to the contract and back to what you were talking about. I used that contract to light a fire under your ass. Yeah. So and what that means is it like parlays it right back to like the Matrix, for example, when he meets the Oracle and she says, what's really going to blow your mind is if I hadn't told you about the lamp, or the pot, would you have knocked it over?
Right.
And people say, well, what the hell's that all about? Right. So where you were at that time, and this a few years ago now, but where you were was struggling. Maybe not physically, maybe not financially, maybe not any of these things, but you were struggling with what you were being faced with what was in front of you.
Right.
And I knew that had I approached you and had we sort of had the one conversation and the meet and greet and the chat and the this and that, after you unloaded to me what you wanted to accomplish, where you were, what you were doing, had I just taken a regular approach and said, here's what you can do, here's what you're capable of doing, here's what we can do for you, here's what's going to happen if we do this, this, and this. And had I been like humdrum about it or anything like that, you would have not taken it.
Right.
So I had to add flair. I had to add flair and pizzazz because I needed you to realize certain things inside of you. And that speaks more to you than it does to me. I mean, I take for granted, obviously, my gift or my ability to do what I do. But what that is that just empowers you. And that comes from sincerity. So I drive from sincerity. Your essence picked up the sincerity and read into the contract, and instantly it got dropped into your psyche that you were going to do what happened.
Right.
And that was huge. That is huge because people immediately want to look for a reason why it won't work. And what you did was read the contract, read the verbiage, understood what was going on, and you looked for a reason to make it work. You looked for the opposite of what society would normally do in that scenario. But you're one of the few people that would. So did you double your income because of me? Who knows?
Sure. No, absolutely. I get that, right? Like, just like you're saying, like, you know, with the Oracle spot, right? Like, would it have happened either way? Who knows? But like, I prefer in this scenario to look back and say that it's because of that. And, you know, putting that in emotion and putting it into my head, me accepting it, me believing it. And then I think another really big part of the whole thing was like, I wasn't stressed out about it. I wasn't pushing I just kind of accepted it. Right. And I think that, you know, as we have this conversation, that's kind of how it goes. Like the more that you push on it, the more that you kind of lose the essence of it. I don't know, right? You getting what I'm saying? So like, let's just like, you know,
that. So to take that from that, right? There's a trick. I have a trick, right? And I'm going to correlate this. This is, and anyone listening to this podcast can do this. Just don't tell who you're doing it to that you're doing it. And it works 100% of the time. So anyone that's got the hiccups, right? So these people have the hiccups and everybody knows what it's like to have the hiccups. So we're talking about magic here. The magic of that contract, the magic of importance, the magic of the ether, the essence, everything around us. This is the magic of the world in which we live. Things we know versus things we don't know.
Right.
If you've got the hiccups or if somebody's got the hiccups, here's how you get rid of it. You take a glass of water, maybe a pint glass, and you show it to the person and they can clearly see the water. And you say, now I'm going to get rid of your hiccups, right? Tilt your head back. Right. So you have the person tilt their head back and then you pinch their nose. And you take the glass of water and you make sure that they know how much water's in there. You put the glass of water on their lips so they can see it and feel it. They can't look at it because their head's tilted back. So now instead of the hiccups, instead of thinking about the hiccups or not thinking about the hiccups, you've pattern interrupted them and you are making them think about the water.
Right.
You hold and delay and delay and delay and delay and delay, and you just tell them, focus on the water hitting your mouth. Delay, delay,
Right.
delay. They're thinking, is he going to screw with me? Is he going to pour it on my face? Is this
Right.
terrible? What's going on? They're thinking a million different things, and then you just drop a little bit of water on their tongue and pull the glass off, let them go, and say, that's it, you're done.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I guarantee you 100% of the time, that gets rid of the hiccups.
I love it.
It only doesn't work when you explain to somebody that that's what you're doing.
For sure. Does it ever work twice?
Yes, as long as you haven't told them why it works in the first place.
Okay.
Why it
fair
works
enough.
is that you've taken the concentration away from them.
Right.
But if you tell them, I'm going to screw with your concentration, you're going to think about something else, then
Right.
they won't. Their brain will be like, I'm going to think about the hiccups. Screw you, right? I'm going to prove you wrong. Well, you're going to suffer from proving me wrong. But that's
Right.
a choice you're going to make.
Right. Right. And I think that's that's also really powerful here too, is, and I just went to the Jack Canfield event, and one of the things that he talked about in there is, and this is not just Jack Canfield, but taking 100% responsibility for the world you live in.
What's your world? There's no other person responsible for anything going on in your world.
Right.
Because people are like, well, I'm not responsible for that car crash. No, you're not. But your world isn't that car crash. Your world is how you react to that car crash.
Sure. Well, I mean, and that's the next part that he talks about too, is I think it's like events plus your your response equals the outcome, right? And this still relates to your world and determining on what it is that you actually see out there. For example, you and I could have seen that car crash that you're talking about, and we're both going to walk away feeling like something different happened. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Well, I mean, you're talking perspective.
Sure.
So perspective is events that took place beforehand creates your perspective. So when you say, you and I will take something different from a car crash, I could say, that's terrible. I really liked that car. It's a shame you wrecked it.
Right.
Right. I'm not having any connection to the people inside the car. You can say, I don't know, my great grandfather was killed by a fleet of car crashes. Whoever wants to say whatever they want to say about anything at any time,
Right.
that's what they can say. So you can say, I feel for the people inside because I understand what it's like, or I've experienced one myself and I understand what it's like. And you're not thinking about the car.
Right.
I'm thinking he's wrecked the car. This is terrible. What an atrocious thing. So funny thing is, you and I both feel pity, but for two different reasons and two different things. I could also, on the flip side, I could hate people and cars and walk by that car crash and say, good, So
right. No. And that's great. I mean, absolutely. Right. And that's what I'm saying. So our lifetime of experiences and how we translate those experiences and then internalize those experiences are going to be the result of the outcome, the outcome of what we see there.
Well, that's where you judge reality. Is this real? Well, yes. I mean, the car crash thing was just an impromptu analogy, obviously, but I always equate this to a baseball game. If you're watching a game, I was going to say Cubs, but you're not a Cubs fan. Who's your team?
I got the Phillies. I mean, if I got to pick a team, it'll be the Phillies.
Okay, so Phillies and Mets. There you go.
Right,
That's a plausible thing that's going to happen, and it does quite often. They're in the same division.
All
So
the
you and
time.
I are at a Phillies Mets game, and
Sure.
and we're having the time of our life. The popcorn is flowing. Subsequently, I'd say the beers are flowing, but you and I both quit drinking at roughly the same time, which is kind of an interesting thing. Separately, completely separately, totally together. Kind of fun. So you and I are at the Jays game, hot dogs and popcorn and however the song goes. Mets win, Phillies lose. I'm super excited. You're super depressed. Nothing at all changed. We both came to the arena, or the the diamond, the arena.
Right. Yeah,
We both came to the sporting event gala in one automobile. We split parking. We split the tickets. We split the hot dog. We split the popcorn. We split the whole day because, we had to feed the kids and get everything taken care of so that we could all get out to the game. We had the exact same experience, but the Mets won and the Phillies lost. So I'm happy and you're not.
Right.
And that's really neat because people are like, well, okay, so that's my reality. But see, reality, people think there's only one reality, but there isn't only one reality because our reality that day, the two of us, was our reality.
Right.
Different outcome, though, different feeling. And then that parlays back to well, why are you a Mets fan? What in your life took place that made you a Mets fan? So the reality and the creation of the reality is up to you. And that's
Right.
not just, we're talking about a ball game here, but that's life. That's
Right.
work. That's your job, your husband, your wife, your annoying neighbor's dog. All of these things that take place that are what you're thinking aren't what they're thinking, because their life isn't your life. Your life is a series of your events that you're projecting onto other people. When you have expectations, or when you believe something to be a certain way, that's where a lot of depression comes from. A lot of depression, or a lot of anxiety, or a lot of disgruntledness comes from people not doing what you expect them to do, without realizing that you having expectations of other people is highly selfish.
No, I like that too, right? But it's our expectations, and when they when they aren't being met by other people, right? It's we get upset, right? We're like, they aren't meeting my expectations. They aren't doing exactly what I expected them to do. Or can we say, I wonder, and the flip side of that is, what we can do is say, I wonder if they're okay today, right? I wonder what happened with them today, because normally, or, the situation can be different. So we have the ability to interpret it in a number of different ways. And that's part of our choice, right?
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And but the headline of this podcast, for example, the prosperity practice is, we are responsible for ourselves. We've always been responsible for ourselves, and we need to make sure that we stay completely responsible for ourselves. So instead of, having sympathy for somebody for a certain reason, or a certain demeanor, or a certain thought, or maybe they didn't live up to your expectations, or any of these things, the negative connotation, to think it or to speak it, allows you to live in it. It's hard to avoid it. It's hard to, like, a lot of everything that we do is taught us to be negative and to fear. And if you live in fear, if you watch the news, you live in fear,
right?
It's one of those things where you have the choice. You have the choice to be like, I hate this. I don't like this. I don't want this. I'm mad that the Mets or the Phillies lost, all of these. Right. I'm mad that car crash happened.
Sure.
Are you mad? Like, that's your prerogative. That's your
choice, right? That's your choice to react in that way.
Exactly. So if these people let you down, like you said in the a minute ago, if these people let you down, they didn't let you down. Your expectations of what they're supposed to be may have let you down, but you having those expectations in the first place are absurd. You want to get something done, you want to get a job done, absolutely. Go out there and do it. And there's a million people out there that rely on everybody else to get done what they need to get done, right? And that's fine. The CEO of a company, he's delegated a million tasks. And so many people are like, I want to be the CEO. I want to be the boss. I want to be this, that, and the other thing. But for 99% of any Fortune 500 company, the guy that's running the show, for the most part, has started in the mailroom. Like, he built his way up. He knows the ins and outs. He's the one that can problem solve on the fly.
Right.
And what he did there was take care of his life. He took care of what he wanted to do. He created what he wanted to do.
Right.
So don't allow certain things. If you're looking for prosperity for the most part is happiness.
Mm-hmm.
When you're happy, you move forward, you achieve, you collectively mold in with the group, you move, you're being prosperous.
Right. Well, I think that's a great question, Adam. What does prosperity mean to you?
Happiness. Prosperity. Yeah. Prosperity means, like, if you're being prosperous, you're growing. Yeah. That's kind of what it means to me. And there's a lot of times that we're tied. Being prosperous means had a good quarter for business, or bought that new car for the ego, or anything along those lines. But prosperity for the most part is I think the ability to give is what prosperity is. Yeah. The more you can give, the more prosperous you are. And prosperity is imperative. It's integral into us being a happy human, an all encompassed human. Every facet of you must be lit up, must be happy about what you're doing. Right. Because we're not here to push papers. We're not here to work 9 to 5 and buy a house that we can't afford, in a car that we can't afford, to drive to a job that we don't want, and clothes that we don't want to wear to impress people that we don't like, right, for the sake of all this bullshit. And In
but
all
we're
honesty,
doing it. Like, I mean,
yeah,
everybody's doing it. Why? So how did how did we end up here, Adam? You know, that
television.
you think so? I think TV definitely has a huge part to do with it. But I mean, you know, there was probably that was probably going on.
How did we end up here? I want to say easily how we ended up here, because
Yeah.
nobody told us about the magic. And what I mean by that is the hiccups. Let's go back to the
Right.
hiccups.
Sure.
Hiccups, that trick works it'll work 10 out of 10 times until they know why it works.
Hmm.
So why are we chasing cars? Why are we trying to buy houses? Why are we trying to keep up with the Joneses?
Hmm.
Because nobody told us what it means. Because
Hmm.
we don't know the magic behind it.
Right.
I don't need. Like, think about this: an actual true to life scenario is an individual struggling to meet his obligations. He has a wife and 1.5 kids. He has, I don't know, an Audi R8 in the driveway. He has 5 bedrooms in his beautiful house at this specific address. And he's struggling. He's struggling. He's depressed, and he's all this crap. Why is he struggling and depressed? He doesn't make enough money. He spends too much money. His wife doesn't do anything for him. His kids are annoying. I don't know, how annoying can they be at 1.5? I would assume actually a lot. Pretty annoying. I've never had kids, so I'll take that out the window. But here's the deal. You know, he needs a minivan, and he needs 3 bedrooms, and then he's downsized. He's moved out of that neighborhood. He's dropped the price of the car. He's dropped the price. He's dropped the insurance. He's dropped the house, the mortgage. He's paying less in property tax. What he's done is he's made a choice to reclaim his sanity. And his sanity, by definition, is what he chooses it to be. So if he says, I'm regaining financial prosperity by downsizing all these things and downgrading all these things, then great. But if he says, I'm losing the image because I'm losing my 5-bedroom house, like a bedroom that sits empty right now,
Right.
that doesn't even have Picassos in it. Jeez Louise. So prosperity's massive. Prosperity's huge. Prosperity's different. Business, the world in which we live, happiness, mindset, all of this comes from your stance, comes from your opinion, comes from what you've seen on TV, what you've heard on the music and the radio, and what you've listened to, and what you've surrounded your life with. Right. There's no shame in having a beautiful 3-bedroom house and a brand new minivan and 1.5 kids and a beautiful wife and a job that pays really well. Right. But that job can pay you really well. And if you've overspent on your house, car, and luxuries, for what? To impress people? Like I said, we buy things with money we don't have to impress people that we don't like, things that we don't need or want.
Right.
But we think we need to. So if we can't be happy, why do anything? You know?
Sure. Yeah.
And we could even parlay this back to the baseball analogy. If you and I are sitting there again watching that game, you can be miserable that they lost. I can be happy that they won, or we can both be happy that we spent some time together and caught a ball game.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. You talk a little bit about like the pattern disrupts, and that's what I'm accomplishing with. That's the intent of the program I set up with the prosperity practice, right? So putting people into a different mindset where they go through and they take a look at what they actually want instead of looking at what's missing in their lives. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, seeing that there is more abundance in their life than they've ever given themselves the opportunity to do it. Can we talk about like switching somebody from a scarcity mindset to a prosperity mindset?
It's a tough one. And it's a fun one for somebody like me. Like the scarcity mindset, the funny thing that I found is the people, like, I mean, it almost makes sense, but like the people that have the most scarcity. So the people that I think are the most miserable are the people with all the money. And a lot of that has to do with, you know, saving the money, keeping the money. I worked hard for my money. It's my money. Right. I want the money. Right?
Right.
Now, there's a certain amount of money that we need to live. There's also a certain amount of money that we need to make money. So I don't worry about money. That's not because I'm an idiot. It's a matter of having your money make money for you. So if you want to be happy, gain knowledge. knowledge of what to do, knowledge of how to invest. If you don't want to invest because you're afraid that the whole world will collapse, then that's okay too, right? But that's an idea and an opinion. I'll tell you this right now. If somebody somewhere pressed a button and all the power went out in the world, every single person would be broke because you'd have what's on your back, and that's it.
Right.
Right. We got the whole world. They're not even working for money anymore because back in the day, remember Scrooge McDuck? They'd dive into that thing and swimming around in the coins. Yeah. As kids, we were like, "Hey, man, that looks like a lot of fun. I want that kind of money." Right. But but the reality of an adult is, if you hit that pile of coins off a diving board, it's a broken neck. Yeah. So there's nobody hoarding money, and money also is pointless. You could take $1 million. I could give you $1 million, right? I'd say, here's a suitcase full of $1 million, and I could take you 100 miles into the Arctic with a pair of Nikes, and a parka. How long until you burn that money or use it as kindling? That's how valuable it really is. You can't even burn it now. It's plastic. You're not allowed. Well, in some countries, I don't know if you guys still have paper bills, but we're in Canada, it's all plastic. Europe, it's all plastic.
Yeah.
But that's, these are all opinions. These are all mindsets. You can work your ass off, right? You can work your ass off for everything you think you own. You can pay your house off entirely, right? And you can think it's yours. And you can say, I'm not going to pay property taxes, right? And you realize it's not your house.
Yeah.
If you don't pay your taxes, the government's going to take it from you anyway. So any way you look, any way you shape yourself or turn or anything, there's a negative connotation to all of it. But on the flip side, there's a positive.
Absolutely.
So the prosperity of the whole thing, and that is, it really boils down to how you want to see it, how you want to look at it, how you want to, I don't know. I mean, there's so many arguments one way or the other, right? But what are you arguing for?
Well, so I mean, let's go back even to just like one of the first people you and I talked about was like Wayne Dyer, and Wayne Dyer has his saying that when you change the way you see things, the way things appear change, right? So if you change your mindset into prosperity and you see like the benefits of it, and you recognize that we talk about the amount of abundance in the world. You take a thimble to you've got a choice. You can take a thimble to the ocean, or you can take a dump truck to it, right? And it's not going to do neither one's going to do a bit of difference to that ocean. So when we talk about abundance, we talk about like just the massive amount that's out there. Even I just listened to just watched a Grant Cardone class the other day, and same thing. He's got the same thing. Changing the mindset from thinking there's not enough out there to knowing that there's enough out there for you. I'm not talking about saying you don't have to not worry about money, but like, what do you actually want, and go for it, right? And without thinking that you're being bad or evil. And this was something else that we talked about in Wallace D. Waddle's book, and this is the one that really flipped the switch for me, is this: if you're going out there to get money to just kind of stockpile it and not use it, then that's not really doing you much service. But if you're getting it to live your life to its fullest, we talk about like bringing yourself to the world or giving to the world. What's your contribution to the world? And you're using it to make contributions en masse. Like say you and I took this to the road, we would have to make enough money to get on the road, to make the presentation, to do the marketing, to set up the venue and all that stuff in order to service more people. So we would need more money to do that.
The neat thing about that though is are you like when you actually do it right, you're not trying to make more money, right? You're just trying to give.
Right.
So what really happens is this stuff goes on to autopilot. So when you start following your passion, you do hit autopilot. Like you just start working, and the more work you do, the better your message gets. The better your message gets, the better everything becomes. Why people panic is, especially in this field, in this industry, you'll see a lot of people that want to be coaches. There are so many people that do want to be coaches, which is great, because those people in their day-to-day lives are pushing prosperity and they're pushing certain things. But there are people that want to be coaches because they think that they're in it for the money.
Right.
And I'll tell you, if you do anything for the money, you'll never be happy at all, period. In any avenue of anything that you ever do. Happiness, the only happiness you'll find in doing something for the money is a sarcastic happiness, which is great. But every single sarcastic person I know, including myself, when I was at my most sarcastic, was dead inside.
Right.
So, I mean, I use sarcasm now as a great sense of humor because I'm hilarious. I'm absolutely. But aside from that,
I've got the greatest jokes.
I'm the greatest. I just am. But the reality is, I mean, you know, sarcasm. There's a darkness to sarcasm, but I'm honestly going to tell you that I completely lost my train of thought.
Damn dog.
I tell you, the dog threw me off. My inside jokes, my greatness threw me off. Yeah, it is an interesting avenue to go down when it comes down to your mind. And every single thing that we've talked about with regards to mindset, to prosperity, to beliefs, to this, to that, to how you react to something, to how you do this, to how you do that. I mean, you know, we could go extremely existential and we could start talking some Alan Watts and some Jed McKenna on here and their ideologies and what they're saying, thinking, and doing, because these things are, you know, to really find out kind of where you stand and what you're doing, you definitely have to take in as much possible information to the extreme of where you stand so that you can go all the way out there and pull yourself all the way back.
Yeah.
Now, what we were talking about before I lost my mind was following through with what you're doing, following through with your passion, following through with your sincerity, and following through with your happiness. Don't do it for the money, and don't get into it if you can't do it. Like if you can't go a year without a paycheck, don't try to become a coach.
Right.
If you want to keep working your job and you want to coach small things because you want to help, then do that. Right. But there are coaches out there that are charging 100, 250 grand, you know, per session. And session is like a class. It's whatever it is, until the goal is. Right. There are people that charge by the hour. There are therapists that, you know, insurance will pay for it. There's a level for everybody.
Right.
And in coaching as well, there's grades. It's like you can't expect to take a kid out of kindergarten, drop them into a grade 12 class and have them figure it out.
Right.
So a coach can charge whatever a coach wants to charge, and what they should charge should be indicative of the level of the level of value that they're giving and where they stand. And that's simple. Start off as a 500, go to a 3,000, 5,000, 10,000, 17,000, 25,000. You just keep leveling yourself up the more and the more value you bring.
Right.
To the point where then you learn what to do with it. You learn how to handle the money, how to handle the influx, how to handle the people, how to handle yourself in a situation, how to pay your taxes, because Lord knows the school didn't teach us that. How to do it properly, how to do the stuff that you want to do properly. And then when you realize that at a certain point, and it's a small point, it's not even six figures. Once you're at past 60, 70 grand, you know, you're free. Because now you have what's called cash flow.
Right.
And like you said, we can take this on the road. We can be prosperous. We can change more and do more, be more. You and I could put $5 grand each into an event and walk away with 25 grand. No problem. Right. And that's a drop in the bucket. But at the end of the day, it's not about the money. That money then just goes into the ability to put on a bigger thing.
Right.
And then that bigger thing helps more people. And when you help more people, you can then put on a bigger thing. Right. And at the end of the day, people are like, well, how much money do you make? And what are you doing? And are you like, you have all this stuff? I mean, like, what are you going to do? Your house is paid for, your car's paid for, your taxes are paid. You're up to date on everything. You know, you have everything you want. There's a boat in the water. Who knows? But at what point is enough enough? Like, why do we need more? Right. And the more people make and the more ambition people have and the more people drive, and you see all these people with their Lambos and their Ferraris and their this and their that, they don't give a shit. These people just buy them because they're there. I mean, I have a Rolex. It's sitting on there, and I bought it because I thought I had to have it. I mean, I've also got a Timex, right? Because I've always had a Timex.
Talk about like the desire and the need to have the Rolex. I mean, what do you think led up to that? And then, you know, what did it satisfy? And then
nothing.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely nothing. And it's such a waste of time because you're wearing the Rolex and you're like, I don't want to bang this watch. And then you're like, I can only wear this, you know, out to dinner with, you know, certain clientele and people I'm trying to impress. And the funny thing is then you're like, well, okay, so every single person I'm trying to impress to buy this, to get that, to get them to sign on with me, that's bullshit. That's BS.
Right.
You're not living your true self.
Sure.
You know, and your true self can be like, no, man, my true self really digs Rolexes, right? Until you.
Right.
until you're not, until you don't need it. Like all the people, and not even just Rolexes, but like suits and everything like that. I have a collection of suits as far as the eye could see because that's what we had to wear. That's what we did.
Sure.
And now it's like, I don't know. We started this conversation before we went live. I just got myself a baseball jersey. I'm a Mets fan. I got the old school Mets jersey here that I've loved since I'm a kid, and I'm super comfortable. The richest people in the room are wearing tracksuits, right? The poorest people in the room are wearing $5,000 suits. And then it comes down to mentality. So when we talk about prosperity and we talk about joy and we talk about life and living life, I mean, you can do what you're told to do, which is keep leveling up. We've made these cars. We've done these things. You've earned your $1 million. Go spend 250. Who cares?
Right.
You don't need to spend the money. You need to make sure that you're fed. You need to make sure that there's clothes on your back. You need to make sure that at the end of the day, you're happy. Right. And I'll tell you one thing. All of those expensive toys, the Rolexes, the watches, the this, the that, the cars, none of them matter. None of them satiate anything. The minute you get them, especially based out of emptiness, you're like, well, I don't care. It doesn't do anything for me.
Right.
And there's so many people right now struggling, going, money would solve all my problems. I'll take that Rolex.
Right.
I'll sell it. I'll put it to good use. Well, no, you won't. Because you don't have a money problem. You have a mentality problem.
Sure.
And
that makes sense.
And that's huge. That's a huge realization, right? But there's a lot of people that are probably listening to this right now that went, I don't have a mentality problem. Click. I'm not listening to this anymore.
Sure.
Right. And they'll never have the answers that they need. They'll never have the help that they need because they think, I just need more money. Right. But if I gave somebody that needed money, a bunch of money,
right,
I guarantee you a month from now, they'd come back with a brand new pair of shoes, depending on how much I gave them, maybe the new iPhone, no money, and they'd still need money for bills.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, they're still going to end up right where they were before.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They were talking about that. They were talking about the powers that be and all that. They were talking about, the guy that's running Walmart right now could literally fly over the country and drop $10 million randomly, just leaf bomb it. Right. He says, guaranteed that money would all come right back into my pocket in no time.
Right.
And it would all just funnel back into his Walmart store.
I mean, that's what they talk about too, right? Like, even if they were to distribute all the money, it's still going to end up back to the same people who have the most money right now because they understand it, and they understand what they're doing with it. But again, they also practice an abundance mindset. And what's interesting is in the book and the program, the mastery, the Mastery Key program? He talks about that. He goes, what's big, always gets bigger, and what's small always gets smaller, right? Or like what's big always gets like a snowball. You just roll it up, and it's just going to keep gathering. And that's kind of the idea of like if you've already got a lot of money, you're just going to keep getting more.
Not if you're setting it on fire.
But that's the gist of it, right? Like, whatever's already kind of big in your mind, like maybe scarcity is already big in your mind. Sometimes that just keeps growing because all you do is you look around and you see scarcity. All you do is you look around and your filter is set for that. And that's, I think, I've been going through this practice myself. I think since we have met, it's been a practice, and it is a prosperity practice of going through, readjusting your filters, readjusting how you wake up every day, readjusting how you live your life, and readjusting what it is that you look for in the world to see prosperity nonstop. And also in Wallace D. Waddell's book, the most important thing you can do is see what you want to see, regardless of how others are seeing it or regardless of what's in front of you.
Well, when you say regardless of how others are seeing it, this is one of the neatest things in the entire world, because you don't know how others are seeing anything, but you can project or you can assume that you know.
Adam, one sec. I got to pause this, bud. I got to take this work call real quick. Sorry, bud.
Yeah. What was I talking about?
It was really important.
I think it was.
Let's so sorry, I got the for my listeners out there, sorry about that. Had to look, like you said, doing some of these things on the side because it's what I love to do. I still got my 9 to 5 and had to tend to a call on that one. But let's talk about the whole idea is and you talked about this in the beginning too, is like, if we do this with the intent for money, then that's kind of like a loss making proposition. And I always tell people when I first started Fatherhood for the Rest of Us, the idea was, I was like, oh, I'm doing this for money. But as it continued, and as I learned more, and as I did more of the inner work, and you know, as I did more of that personal development and developed my space, I came upon the realization about what it was I was really doing, what I was doing, and like, you know, who I became through that process. And like, that's what's exciting to me about doing the prosperity practice, is that sometimes, and this was mentioned by somebody else, I forget who it was, but sometimes even if you do the right thing for the wrong reason, which is what I was doing, it still ends up being the right thing, right?
Well, there's no right thing, wrong reason. I mean, again, our life is a series of reflections, right? So,
Right.
so we're gonna reflect upon our life and say, well, I could have done this, and this differently. But the reality is, you're gonna do what you were always gonna do, you know. And it's a matter of timing. It's a matter of who you become. People want to know what the secret to life is, and you know what's the purpose behind it all. What's the key to life? What's the reason that we're all here? And the simple answer to that, and the only real answer to that, is we're here to become.
Sure.
And, you know, people can say, well, you know, my life says, and I've got this and I've got that. And then there are people that are like straight up just watching, you know, all the positive things. Like we were talking earlier about perspective and about, you know, what you see and what you're focusing on, what you're seeing and what you're focusing on.
Right.
There is there's a meme I really quite like. There's two dudes painting in prison, and one dude he paints the bars, and the other guy paints what's behind the bars, like the outside. He can see past it, so he paints a window without bars, right?
Sure.
So he's free,
right?
You know, Charles Manson. That's a strange thing on your first podcast to bring up Manson, right?
Yeah, sure, do it.
Our perception of Charles Manson is one that's delivered. You know, I'm not saying he's a good or a bad guy. All I'm saying is you can certainly tell that there's a story about him, right? Mm-hmm. And Charles Manson had moments of clarity. If you actually look into Charles Manson, there's a lineage of his wealth. There's a lineage of his parents, his history, his family. He was a huge environmentalist that was onto some pretty big things. But none of us know that. We only know him as a super crazy guy that talked some people into killing some other people.
Right.
And then he was pumped full of drugs. You know, but there's some very interesting interviews with him in totally clear mind. And take from him what you want. The story, believe anything that you want to believe, but I'm neither here nor there on any of it. But what I will say is he was a fascinating character, and I did some research.
Right.
And the biggest takeaway I got from him was when he was talking about mindset. He says, "I've been in prison." He says, "I've been in prison. I've been physically in prison for the majority of my adult life, for the majority of everything. I don't know when he went into prison. I don't know how old he was."
Right.
But he's in jail, and he's speaking out about jail. He's speaking out about the prison sentence and the mindset of being in prison and all that sort of stuff. And you know, prison. You know, we were also talking about pattern interrupts. He says, "You can't put me in prison because I'm inside my mind.
Right.
I'm always inside my mind." And humans, if you take that into consideration, humans are always inside their heads. There's no inside or outside type of thing. Like you can physically standing outside,
right?
But that's where your body is. You know, that's kind of a thing. And not wanting to be in prison is the prison, right? If you're in prison, for example, and you really want to be there, it's not so bad. It's not so bad at all.
Right.
And nothing's changed except for what you're looking at and how you're viewing it.
Right.
Prison also is the fact that prison exists is a pattern interrupt to, especially in North America, to have people realize that, you know, they're technically in jail. You know, and again, it comes down to perspective. You don't think you're in a prison? Try to leave your country. Try to walk into Canada. You know, and it's not even the Canadian border isn't stopping you. It's the Americans. You can't just, you know, you can't walk in here. You know, you don't have a passport. You can't leave the country without a passport. Oh,
right.
Why not? You know, and then people say, well, I've got a passport, right? So then it gets even bigger. So, well, okay, so now I can't leave the earth, or what is the earth? So, I mean, it's all a questionable thing. Like everything that we think we know is what creates where we are, what we want to be, and how we want to perceive what we want to perceive. You know, I bet you any money, prison is not a bad deal for a homeless man in the winter.
For sure.
So when we talk about perspective, prison would be maybe a bad deal to somebody who has all the freedoms in the world,
Right.
and wasn't expecting to go to jail, but then again, perspective. So we can't say any one thing, and maybe again, prison may be a good thing for a junkie that got cleaned up, or
Sure.
who knows? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes on outside of the realm of what we have always thought about.
Right.
So we as the individual listening to this podcast right now has to remove themselves from the situation of observing themselves. And this is how you gain as much possible clarity as you can, because you are all you've ever had and your perceptions are all you've ever been able to relate to.
Mm-hmm.
And even the things that take place in life only took place so that you could reflect upon them personally. And the opinions of other people that you're trying to jointly reflect upon a situation with together are just telling you things, again, for the purpose of you reflecting upon them.
Right.
So where it gets real neat is that it's you. It comes down to what you think, what you like, what you do. There are people that don't like, I would never buy a Lamborghini. I'm going to buy a Ferrari. What do you mean? I can't buy a Ferrari? Oh, I'll get a minivan then.
Well, I mean, I think that's the other thing too, Adam's like, we got so many people out there like, well, you don't need all that. Why would you try to get that? And you don't want that. And you don't need it. Right. And who are you to tell me what I want and what I should have and what I should want, right? And I think that we also talk about this too. It's like, it's not so much the wanting of the thing; it's the attachment to that thing, right? It's if I don't get that, then I'm not a good person, or I can't show the world what I've become until I get that.
I think it boils down back to the meaning of life. It's not about the thing. It's never been about the thing. It's not about having the thing. It's about who do you become.
Yes. Yeah.
Path to acquiring the thing.
Sure. No. And like, look, we could dive deep into who do you become, and I don't think it's even who do you become. It's who. Somebody said it the other day. Is like you're replenished, right? You're restored to yourself. I think is kind of the perception that I've got at this point in time, is that you're restoring yourself, your original self, and then recognizing that is like, when you recognize who you truly are, it's a pretty big impact. And to me, that's the whole gist of even just the kind of the start of the prosperity practice, is to get people just kind of in a different space and then really lead them to themselves, like, and who they want to become.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah. I think so. Otherwise, I mean, I wouldn't throw the website up there. But on the website, I think I've got on there is that, the stories that you've been telling yourself your entire life, if they haven't been serving you, you need to rewrite your story. You need to relook at your story, go back and in Are You Ready to Succeed book, which I love this book, so I've given it away. Probably the top book I've given away right now. But in there, he has you go back and look, rewrite your stories, rewrite like all of your achievements throughout your life. I mean, because most of the times people look at all the flaws and all of what could have been and all of what should have been, versus going back and say, wow, I excelled here, I did something awesome here. And notice that pattern and go back and look at the story that serves you versus this one that you've been serving yourself that's a steaming pile of shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds an awful lot too like Don Miguel Ruiz, the Four Agreements.
I'm listening to that today. I'm almost done listening to it today. It is a great book, and everything that's in there is like, I mean, that's all. Look, the story he's telling in there is, I think, everybody's story. It's like an everyman story, and for me, right? And I think for yourself is like, that's where we are.
Do you know how? I mean, like, what you just said is a beautiful piece of perspective. You think it's an everyman story. Rule number 1 in the Four Agreements is be impeccable with your word. Maybe that's rule number 2. I don't know. Be impeccable with your word is the one piece of advice that I would give anyone. You want to be rich? Do you want everything you've ever dreamed in your entire life? Drink this water. I mean, be impeccable with your word. So it's that simple.
It's a, but I mean, he really breaks it down. I'm gonna have to listen to it again. I'm gonna have to buy the book because even that, like I actually paid for that one outright, even with Audible credits being available. But I'm gonna have to buy it in paperback because I can't. It makes me nuts to not be able to kind of hold the papers. It makes me nuts to not be able to go like underline something and really digest. And I think that once you hear it in your own voice too, like whenever you read in your own voice, and that's just got a certain power of its own.
Okay, that's the first time I'm going to be using one of my props. There it is right there. If you people haven't seen this, if this book hasn't come across to you, these are the 4 agreements. Don Miguel Ruiz. This book is an absolute must-have.
Yeah, no, it's phenomenal.
This is one of those things that, without it, whether you want to believe it or whether you don't want to believe it, whether you think he's a steaming pile of cow dung, as been mentioned earlier, this is a piece of information. This is a chunk of knowledge that needs to be inside your head. And that's imperative, no matter what you do with it. No matter what you do with that knowledge, it's got to be inside your head.
I gotta wonder, is what he's got in that book. And I think over the past decade, there's been such a transition to this type of mindset. Is this just something I'm recognizing or something that I feel, or do you feel the same way?
It's because you started feeling it. Excuse me. Because you started feeling it, you found me. I've been here for a while. You changed your mindset, you changed your patterns, you changed your ideas, you waltzed into my land.
Because I'm a waltzer.
And but I also waltzed in here because we all waltz. We're just waltzing around. That's about it. Right. And that's it. And what's really cool is, you're gonna pick up some stuff and you're gonna go on your own tangents and you're gonna find some things. And you're gonna see stuff that's really important to you. But the real key is that you've started asking the questions. And there are so many people that has started asking the questions, and that are forcing others to ask the questions, because right now what we're doing, if 100 people listen to this podcast today and they say, well, that was crap. Right. That's fine. As long as there's one person that took one thing from this and said, you know what, I will look into that, or I will think about that.
I think it plants a seed though, either way. Right. Yeah. I mean, even if today somebody says it's crap, a year or two later, they're going to look back and be like, oh my God, I can actually pinpoint when this idea or concept entered my mind and took hold.
But I mean, can you trust that? Right? Because did it come into your mind, or did you go and seek it? And then
fair enough. I mean, where do our thoughts come from, right? I mean, if we got to ask the question, where do our thoughts even come from, right? Am I having the thoughts, or are they being delivered?
Of course, but that's what's really that's. I mean, there's literally so much about everything that we're doing that it's like there's so much shit we just take for granted. Right. This is called mental autopilot. Right. It's the same as like if you think about anyone that wants to talk about mental autopilot for a quick second, think about backing your car out. You're going to work. You're going to get in your car. You're going to back out of the driveway. You're going to go to work. You have to walk out of your house with your keys and everything that you need in order. You need to open your car door. You need to throw your bag into your car. You need to put the key in the ignition. You need to put the car in reverse. You need to make sure the garage door is open. You need to apply the proper amount of pressure to the gas pedal and to the brake. You need to understand how to operate a shifter, up and down reverse drive. You need to make sure that you're not going to run over any pets, children, garbage cans. You need to do all of this sort of stuff. You need to absolutely keep in check. You got to make sure that your seatbelt's on. You got to make sure that everything's done. The mirrors are all in place. The mirrors are all in check. And then you have to merge into already moving traffic. Vroom, here we go.
Right.
There's a million things that you just did that you didn't even think about.
No, man, it's all been built in, man. It's all been programmed.
It's all autopilot. And also, how many times have you been driving home? I don't know, late at night, middle of the day, whenever you want. You've been driving home and you realize, Jesus, you just snap back into it. You're like, I've been gone for like 5 minutes.
Oh, all the time. All the time. Yeah.
Right? So that's your brain disappearing, but that's you running on autopilot.
Well, yeah, so that's the subconscious. Well, that's the power of the subconscious. Subconscious is rocking and rolling. Look, I've never learned how to pump my heart.
No, No, you didn't. I can do that. I do that. That's one of my tricks.
But I think that's amazing. To me, that's just amazing. I never learned how to, make my lungs work. Right. So I think that those are some we give our subconscious very little credit for, and we give ourselves very little credit even with what we're born knowing how to do. Right. Breathe and pump blood, create blood, grow hair. I mean, there's a lot we came preloaded with.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I was saying there with I mean, what you just added to it, and then I'm talking about too the memory of habit and all that sort of stuff. There's another one. There's another book too, The Power of Habit. Not Delwig. What's his? I can't remember his name. Anyway, it's a solid book. Sorry, I digress.
Book, right?
Yeah, The Atomic Habit. Yes.
Yeah, it's a good book. Clearly, the guy's last name is Clearly. I think, and that I think
James
it's
Cleary. James Cleary, The Atomic Habit. Phenomenal.
Right. Great book. Yeah.
So, but what I was saying with that is, when we start, and I got to get this point out because it's very important.
Get it?
When we start acting as if our memories are automatic, we start losing who we are, and we start not being able to logically deduce a new situation, a new piece of information. It's like once believing in Santa Claus and always believing in Santa Claus.
Right.
That's an extreme, obviously, but that is the result of not being able to adapt how you think about what you think about.
Right. But I mean, that also indicates that changing your beliefs is relatively easy to do.
Well, what are your beliefs? Your beliefs are just results of things that have happened, right?
I mean, if I'm going to steal from Abraham Hicks, it's just the thoughts that you keep on thinking. You keep thinking.
I believe that.
Right. But I mean, you just over and over again, be like, I believe this, I believe this, I believe this. Oh my God, I don't believe it anymore. And then you just move on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that also talks to the fact that people want consistency, but if you want like a person to stay where they've always been in their entire lives, and you go to that person because they are reliable for this one thing, if they never change, that's sad to me, right? That's like watching a stunted tree.
Well, they hold their purpose. They serve their purpose, those people, because I can attest to that. I mean, you can gauge from those people how far you've come. So when you look back and when you see sort of where they are and what they're doing, you're like, man, I was right there. But that also, therein lies the scenario where you're sitting right here. And like I said, you waltzed into my world there. Mm-hmm. You grow into people, and then you grow out of people. And as you grow out of people, you're growing into new people and new scenarios and new situations.
Right.
So life is predominantly growth. And if you're stagnant, that's terrible. Mm. But the fun thing about people that are stagnant, none of them are listening to this podcast. So, I mean, there's I don't even know if there's a podcast for stagnant people. It could just be like, I don't know, talking about cars.
No, they're out there. They're totally out there. I'm not calling them out, but
I'd actually love to. I'd love to go and listen to something. I mean, for me, it's like I there's a lot of stuff I can't listen to. There's a lot of stuff I have a hard time digesting. I mean, television, most mass media, I have a hard time digesting. Anything that doesn't spark any sort of interest, I have a hard time digesting because it doesn't make any sense to me.
For sure.
But I mean, the podcast, like we were talking about the dumb podcast, I can think of one off the top of my head. People talking about shows. Let's get on the TV and talk about television shows. What did Kardashians do today?
Well, like TMZ, or even Chase. To me, it never made sense to me. Like, I never really gave a damn about famous people or actors, right? Like, why should their lives have any influence over mine? Like, and why do I care about what they're doing? Because they're on TV? I don't care.
Well, and there's another thing too. I mean, think about the celebrities, right? Think about the paparazzi. Think about you as an individual. If you would lose your shit over seeing, I don't know, who's famous, Brad Pitt walking down the street,
right?
What does that say about you, right? So 99% of the world wouldn't care. I'd have to assume wouldn't care that Brad Pitt's walking down the street.
Right.
Anyone. So that if 99% of the world wouldn't care, then wouldn't the paparazzi in fact be fabricated? Wouldn't it be a lie? Wouldn't it be a lark? Wouldn't it, I don't care that Brad Pitt's right there. So why does he have to worry about 800,000 photographers, people losing their shits? Like, it's not the Beatles. I mean, even if the Beatles were right there, all of them, back from the dead, if they were sitting there having lunch, I'd be like, well, that's cool, but at no point would I lose my shit.
We got to get the band back together, boys.
Yeah, I hope you guys are going to put out some new records or something. I mean, we're all here now. This is the weirdest thing in the world. This is great.
Well, Adam, we could do this for days. I know that we could, but we got to wrap it up, brother. I think that we should call this one a to be continued.
Sure.
To be continued. Where should I send people to go check out the infamous Adam Walton?
I mean, for this one, there's nothing. I've got no offers on the go. This is just a fun thing. I always love chatting with you. I'm not looking to sell or promote or do anything, but if you're interested in anything that I've said, certainly check me out. Instagram.com, The Mental Mastery Alliance, thementalmasteryalliance.com. I've got a brand new project on the go. It's Quitting to Achieve. It's my absolute baby, pride and joy. We've got a ton of coaches involved in that. Right now it's all about prosperity. I'd like to practice a little prosperity these days. So,
amen, brother.
So, if you're looking for me, you can find me definitely through Brandon. And you can certainly find me at the Mental Mastery Alliance. I'm pretty easily marked and everywhere to be seen. And I'm pretty opinionated, so be careful.
Adam, thanks again for popping on today.
Always a pleasure, my friend.